Okay, let's get going. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Kimball Parker. I'm the CEO of SixFifty. And for those of you that are hearing about us for the first time, we're the technology arm of the law firm Wilson Sonsini. And so some of you may actually be Wilson Sonsini clients. The firm has helped over 100,000 startups get off the ground, including companies like Apple and Google and Twitter, Lyft, SpaceX. And it's not an exaggeration to say that Wilson Sonsini is one of the best law firms in the entire world. So we work with Wilson Sonsini to create automated legal products. So think like TurboTax, but for really complicated legal problems and with the best lawyers in the world behind it. And the idea is to make the law more accessible, more affordable, and more convenient, so that you can spend your time and money running your business and not on the law. So we've built automated legal products in two areas. The first is privacy law, to help companies comply with the new slate of privacy laws like the GDPR and the CCPA. GDPR out of Europe, CCPA out of California. There's now two additional privacy laws, one in Virginia and one in Colorado. So patchwork of privacy laws around the nation and the world, and we help companies generate the legal paperwork they need. And we help with employment law, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And so this webinar is about a new offering we developed called Employment 2.0. And so I'm going to talk briefly about the employment landscape generally and why we created this product. And then I'm going to show you the tool and talk to you about how we address the challenges that exist today. So a little different format. I'm actually going to jump into the tools. So we're going to talk about employment law, but then I'm going to show you the tools we've built for this Employment 2.0 tool set. So I'm going to kind of jump in now and talk for 10 or 15 minutes about how the law has changed us. And so, we went, for our company, we went remote on March 11th. And that was the date that Rudy Gobert for the Utah Jazz contracted COVID before a basketball game. That was really a big national moment. Rudy got COVID. They then shut down the NBA. They then shut down every other sports league. But that was a really big moment here in Utah. We're located in Salt Lake City, because at least for us, COVID was something that we had heard about on the coast. Like there had been cases in Seattle and New York, but there weren't really cases in Utah. And then two of our most prominent citizens in the state got COVID. And so we, on that night, we shut our business down. We shut our office down, and we moved fully remote. And gosh, it was a scary time. So, what I remember from that is that we kind of thought, hey, this is going to be several months, maybe through, we think it's going to maybe get better in the summer. So we're going to be remote just for a couple months. And that totally was not the case. And so, in the beginning, it seemed like it would be temporary. And then it really settled in, and it started to seem like, geez, this is going to be permanent. Come the fall and the winter, and we'd been wearing masks for 10 months, and the vaccinations were rolling out pretty slowly. It just seemed like, geez, is this the new reality? And now it's kind of somewhere in the middle. Like, I think COVID is going to be with us maybe forever. And we're going to need to get vaccinated every year. We're going to have to run through, some of the things we've dealt with, I think are going to become yearly things for us, unfortunately. But there is a sense that things are getting back to normal. And so, some things in our lives are going to go away from COVID, that we're in there going COVID. I hardly ever wear a mask anymore. I'm vaccinated. And, but some things are permanent. Some things are going to be permanent. So all of this for businesses has, where the rubber has hit the road for businesses and COVID is with employment law. And like when we transferred our workforce from the office to home, we were completely lost about what to do there. And as we've transitioned our employees back to the office, that's tricky too. And so every single development with COVID really impacts employers a lot with employment law. Again, in the beginning, everybody was in an office, interacting face to face, and now everybody's home using their home internet, talking to each other over Zoom. A lot of the assumptions that the kind of employment law was based on didn't really exist anymore. So all of this has really altered employment law in two ways that I want to talk about. The first is that the law is different, and the second is that the way people work is different. And so, but again, before COVID-19, employment law actually moved pretty slowly and predictably. So changes to the law largely followed the schedules of state legislatures. And even then, major changes occurred pretty rarely. And as a result, many practitioners recommended that companies update their policies and handbooks once a year. And that made sense. But starting in March, COVID ushered in a wave of new rules and regulations. So on the federal level, the CDC, the EEOC, the OSHA, all issued, it's a lot of acronyms, all issued guidelines for employers regarding the pandemic. Then states layered on their own standards. And California had different standards than Utah, for example, who had different standards than Illinois or New York. And to make matters even worse, counties and cities issued guidelines. And actually, we see that right now. If you're a business in, for example, Santa Clara County, California, you have a unique set of rules than from any other place really in the nation. And so that layering made things extremely difficult. But what made matters even worse is that these layers of law changed repeatedly through the pandemic. So for example, the city of Oakland on their website tells businesses that they should check back every day, that these rules could change every day, and that they recommend businesses visit the website on a daily basis to keep up with those updates. And so every development with the virus, there's we learn how it spreads, we learn how it doesn't spread, we learn how to prevent it from spreading. There are vaccines, there are new studies, we learn about hotspots. All of those things affected the law. And so places were opening, they were closing, you had to have masks, then maybe not outside. And it's just shifting and shifting as we've learned more and more about this guidance, and all those shifts affected the law. And so during the height of it, it was changing once or twice a week, which is just impossible, again, with all the layers of law, just impossible for a business to keep up with. One really scary part about this is that the consequences of failing to follow those rules couldn't be more severe. Actually, there's an interesting quote from Todd Massich, who's the head of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. And he said that there are 3 crises from COVID for a business, for America. The first is the health crisis. The second is the economic crisis that COVID created. And the third, he thought, was a liability crisis. And so, we've seen this play out a little bit. The employment cases have increased, and those employment cases are very scary for a business for a whole bunch of reasons. So that's really the first way that COVID impacted the employment landscape, in that it really changed the law. Okay. Number 2, it changed the way we work. So before the pandemic, only 20% of employees regularly worked from home. And again, we talked about this, many employee handbooks are based on the assumptions that employees work from the office and use the company's computers and the company's internet and interact with their coworkers on a personal level. Now, 71% of employees regularly work from home. And 50% of employees hope to work from home after the pandemic. And so with a more remote workforce, that creates a lot of challenges. One other big change about the way we work is that people have moved. So instead of having a centralized workforce in one place, companies now have employees that are moving to Utah or Montana or Florida. Utah actually had the biggest net gain of people over the past year than percentage-wise than any other state in the nation. And so a lot of people moved to Utah during the pandemic. And so now a bunch of companies who didn't have to worry about Utah law have to worry about it. And there are big consequences there. For example, in Montana, Montana is not an at-will work state. And so in many instances, an employer can only let go of an employee for cause if that employee spends enough time in Montana. So, there are big changes here. And, again, when an employee moves to Vermont, a company needs to know, well, what are the requirements under Vermont law about jury duty leave? Vermont has a town hall leave, and so each of these states has a unique set of laws. When employees move around, it's becomes much more complicated. And so really what we're dealing with is a workforce that is more remote and more mobile. And finally, the workforce, there have been movements about the workforce becoming more diverse as well. So a lot of very troubling social justice events also happened during the pandemic, this perfect storm of madness going on in our nation. And again, where the rubber hit the road for employers there is employment law, creating a more diverse, friendly, welcoming, and equitable workplace. And so really the workforce changed in three ways. It's more remote, it's more mobile, they're moving all over the place, and hopefully it's more diverse. So this puts employers in a very tricky situation. And so what are some takeaways for employers? One is the legal model that companies and law firms have relied on to help companies with employment law really broke down, because law firms are a one-to-one service business. They are not built for all of their clients needing help at once. And they're also not built for a regime that changes every week. And so both of those things combined basically to create a very difficult supply problem for the law. It was very difficult to get affordable legal help surrounding COVID and what to do after COVID. So that's kind of one interesting takeaway from this time. The second is that some of these changes during COVID are temporary. Masks, social distancing, some are permanent. And so juggling kind of meeting some immediate temporary needs with meeting some long-term needs that have changed is also very, very difficult. So like I mentioned in the beginning, so actually, you know what? I'm gonna stop there and see if there are any questions about kind of the overall employment landscape now and how COVID has affected that. So don't be shy. If you have any questions, you can go into the Q&A. So I'll just wait a couple more seconds, see if there's any questions in the Q&A there. If not, I'll just kind of plow forward. So given kind of the difficulty of a traditional law firm helping the amount of clients that need to be helped and the volume of changes that are happening in this area in employment law, we started to collaborate with Wilson Sonsini. And so, okay, so we actually have a question here. Great. before I kind of get into that. So the question is, how are companies dealing with tax implications of people moving around working remotely? Okay, yeah. So tax is one of the most complicated areas about people moving, because different states have different rules about when you start to need to pay sales tax in a given location, when you start to need to pay other taxes with regard to having employees working there. And so yeah, that's like one of the major complications. Like, again, when an employee moves to a different place, tax is complicated, leave policies are incredibly complicated about when employees have a right to leave. There, basically, it can affect almost every aspect of an employee's employment there. And so yeah, this is one of the big challenges, and we'll kind of talk about how companies address that. So okay, so Wilson Sonsini approached us during the pandemic and basically asked us to help them figure out how to service their own clients. Wilson Sonsini, big law firm, they have 4 to, let's say, 7,000 clients that are active clients at any given time. And again, they have one of the best employment groups in the world, but that employment group can't handle 4,000 companies needing help at once. And so what we did is we built some automated tools to help that group of clients. And so actually, I'm going to share my screen here. One moment to kind of talk about what we. Oh, I think Trent, you have to give me share capabilities. But basically, we tried to figure out really what are the tools that a company needs, and what areas of law do those tools need to address to not just help with the current COVID issues, but to really help a company moving forward. Because again, like, employment law has changed more in the past 12 months than it has in the past 40 years. And so, an employment policy or employment policies and an employment handbook that was drafted even in 2019 is now out of date because of everything that has changed. Okay, now I have the capabilities here. Perfect. Put this on remote, on full screen. And so we've now built a suite of tools called Employment 2.0, which is what I'm going to show you. So we have 3 types of tools. We have assessments, we have policies, and we have tools to collect data from employees. And I'm going to give you examples of those. And then we have topics that these address to help companies with the current issues of the day. So we have an employee handbook that it contains over 50 policies that take into account the law in every state and that take into account the new way we work. So we built an automated employee handbook. We have a diversity, equity, and inclusion module to help companies create a more diverse and friendly workforce in a way that's compliant with the law, which is tricky. We have a COVID topic where we can help companies navigate all the different aspects of and all the layers of regulation related to COVID, which is ongoing and actually has become more complicated with vaccines. And then we're developing and releasing a hybrid module. So to help companies kind of figure out what are the things we need and the policies we need in place as our workforce is kind of part back, part not, part at home, part at the office. For each one of these topics, again, these 3 types of tools help. So the assessments, and I'm going to show you some assessments, they help you get a grasp of the area of law. So for example, for COVID, the assessment will run you through a whole bunch of questions, let's say 35 questions, about everything you need to think about with regard to having employees in the workspace during COVID. And then it'll give you all the information you need, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, about each of those subtopics. So for example, do you need certain types of filters in your air filtration system? Do you need to screen employees at the door? Do you need to screen employees before they come in for any COVID symptoms? How can you verify vaccine that people have received vaccine? So that's the assessment. It's really intended to help you wrap your mind around all the different law and all the different best practice considerations in that area. Next, we have policies. So once you've kind of surveyed, know where you stand, know the law, understand some of the key implications, then you can start to make decisions about what to do. And the policies help you make those decisions, put them down on paper, and send them out to your employees to communicate what your plan is. Next, we have data collection. One interesting thing about this pandemic is that employers are required in many places to collect health information from their employees. So many jurisdictions require that employees are screened for COVID symptoms before they come into the office. And so that's a data collection exercise. And many jurisdictions, either explicitly or by implication, require you to collect vaccine information from your employees. And so we have a system to help companies do that, to help them collect the information they need from their employees. So I'm going to share my screen again here and show you what our tools look like to help companies do their assessments, do their policies, and do their data collection. Okay, so I'm going to run through the assessments first. Okay, so let's take COVID or returning to the office during COVID. You click into return to work. You can see that there's an assessment here, return to work assessment. We're going to click new document, and this will run you through a set of questions, again, about basically all the things that you need to think about when you return to the office or when you start to transition your workforce back to the office. For example, has your company surveyed its workforce to determine which employees are ready, willing, and able to return to work? Yes or no? Let's click yes. Does your company have a plan to screen and or test employees? And so basically what this is doing, this is asking you the same questions that an attorney would ask, and it's following up in the same way that an attorney would follow up too. So if you say, yes, we are going to screen and or test, then it'll say, okay, great. Are you going to screen? You're going to test? You're going to screen and test. Let's say screen and test. And it's going to follow up. Okay, tell us about how you're going to screen people. You're going to make them fill out a questionnaire. You're going to do a temperature. You're going to do both. Let's do both. Okay, tell us about how you're going to test people. You're going to do an antibody test. You're going to do a COVID test. Which of these tests? I'm going to do this test. And it'll follow up about, okay, when are you going to do that? When are you going to do the policy? And it's going to run you through a whole bunch of questions, 30 to 45 questions, depending on how you answer those. And then when you're done, you get a paper assessment. So let's download one we did earlier. This actually is blank, so it doesn't contain any answers. We just printed it out kind of blank, but you can see the format here. So it gives you a whole bunch of information generally, and then it'll run you through each question. So have you surveyed your workforce? Depending on how you answer, it'll say yes or no. It'll be red, green, or orange. And then it'll give you lots of helpful considerations about each one of those topics. So are you planning to test? Okay, here's all the information you need about testing. Are you planning to screen? Here's all the information you need. Oh, you're in California. Here's specific California information. So you can see this document here is huge. It's 120 pages long of dense COVID return to work information. And again, this is meant for companies to take this information, kind of get an idea for the landscape and what the landscape of the rules and regulations are, to be able to make decisions. So, before a company can even make decisions about what to do transitioning their workforce back to the office, they need to know what the decision points are, what the implications of those decisions are, and that's what the assessment is meant to do. It's going to take you through each consideration, what the implications are, and school you in that. Once you've then done that assessment, then you can go in and create a policy. And again, same system. We're going to ask you a series of questions. What the system is doing in the background is based on your answers. It's going to add paragraphs in, it's going to take them out, it's going to adjust paragraphs, and basically ask you questions just like a lawyer would. And then when you're done, you can download a policy. And so here's a return to work policy for XYZ company. And again, this is catered to the company's choices and catered also to the jurisdictions they're in. And so because it's automated, we can offer it for a lower price. We can update it automatically, and it can push to all these people. You know, it can basically give updates in scale, and it can service, you know, hundreds of companies. So we have that same assessment and policy framework for COVID and returning your workers to the office. We have it for diversity, equity, and inclusion. You take an assessment to run through everything you need to think about with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then you can build policies around that. We have it for the handbook to kind of help you figure out what are all the big choices I need to make regarding my employee handbook, especially now, given COVID and vaccines and a more diverse workplace. And then we'll help you generate the policies you need and the handbook you need, catered to, takes into account all the laws in all 50 states. And so we have that same assessment, learn about it, and policy framework for the different key areas that are important now. And that's all included in Employment 2.0. It's basically how to handle the temporary issues, COVID, and how to handle all of the permanent issues through your employee handbook and through your diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So I'm going to stop there to see if there are any questions. Okay, good question from Kimberly. Will all the changes made to the law be on a rolling basis, and how often would you recommend a company run through the assessment to update their policies? Okay, really great question. Yes, all the updates will come in on a rolling basis. So for the really fast changing areas of law, like the COVID workplace regulations, we're going to update that, possibly every week. Okay, so right now we've been updating it every single week because the CDC came out with guidelines about vaccines. It actually created a more complicated situation because there used to just be regulations about, to help people not get COVID for people who could possibly have it, because nobody was vaccinated, everybody had to wear masks. There was a pretty clear set of rules. Now there's two rules. There's rules for people who are vaccinated and rules for people who are not vaccinated. And so it's basically doubled the amount of rules. Anyway, long story short, we update those rules every single week if necessary. And so it comes in on a rolling basis, and then we send you alerts. So we'll send you an alert saying via email or in the app, and that says, okay, here are the changes that have been made. And then we will indicate to you whether we think, this is a big change, this is a small change, so that you can judge whether you need to send out to your employees another policy for them to certify. And so they will come in on a rolling basis. For employee handbook, we update it every single month. And so, all the COVID rules are changing, but a lot of the employment rules just generally are changing. And so we're on top of it. We're updating the employee handbook every single month. Okay. Another question. How often is the information, the assessment, and your program updated as a continuous? Perfect. Okay. So yeah, updated continuously. Is it, and then the other part of this question, is it continuously vetted by legal expert? Yes. So we update all the policies. We send it out to Wilson Sonsini to their employment group. They look over it. They give us some red lines, and they send it back, and then we post it up. So everything we're doing is vetted by what we think is the best employment group in the entire nation. And that's with regard to every aspect of this. That's with regard to employee handbook, to diversity, equity, and inclusion, to COVID workplace policies, and to hybrid policies. And so all of that is vetted, created and vetted by some of the best employment experts in the nation. Okay. Any other questions about the assessment and policy portion? And really, this is kind of like what an employment attorney would do for you. And we've really tried to mimic that experience so that a company, can feel like, oh, this is like having one of the best employment experts like by my side, helping me think through all the issues and helping me generate the policies I need. Except that not with the billable hour. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, is there a live customer service feature as we do the assessment? Yes. Okay, so everybody who signs up for Employment 2.0 gets time with one of our employment experts to help you kind of through that issue. If you have any questions, you then can email our customer support, or you can put it in chat. So down here, there's a little chat function. And so, we say, but, how can we help you? Blah, blah, blah. You can put your questions in the chat, and then we will respond and get back to you right away. Our customer success team is like one of the best customer success teams, we think, in the nation. And so they can help you with both questions about the platform and the technical tools, and they can also help you with kind of figuring out some of the legal implications for different aspects of this. Okay. Another question, are you willing to tell us kind of the general cost for Employment 2.0? Yes. Okay. So for very small businesses, so 1 to 50 employees, we offer it between $2,500 and $5,000 a year. Okay. For bigger companies, we're talking, let's say 100 to 500 employees, the cost is going to be around $500 or $5,000 to $10,000 a year. And for big enterprise companies, it'll be over $10,000. So tiered pricing based on the size of the company. A part of that is because right now, the bigger the company, the more states where they're going to have employees in, especially as employees have become more mobile. So the more states they're going to have to take into account in their COVID policies or their employee handbooks. So anyway, small companies, $2,500 to $5,000. Medium size, 100 to 500 employees, $5,000 to $10,000 a year, and 10,000 and up for kind of big enterprise employees. So we've tried to price it at a price point that basically any company can afford for these employment tools. Okay, any other questions there before I show you our tools to help collect employee information? So this is a very tricky part of this new regime. I'm just going to switch organizations here to kind of show you this tool. So, okay, so there are kind of two main instances where you need to collect information from your employees that are different, that have never really existed before, ever. One is you probably, especially for non-vaccinated employees, and in many jurisdictions for everyone, you have to collect information about the symptoms they're feeling before they come into the office. Okay, so we have set up a little, we call it a ticketing system, but it's kind of like Google Forms. And so we're going to go down to the daily questionnaire system. Okay, so what you can do is we have a default questionnaire that we can help you deploy with your own branding, and then if you want to change it, for any reason, you can change this in our system. So we created kind of a sample one for Wayne Enterprises for all of you comic book fans out there. And so basically what a company would do is they would send this link out to their employees, and they would say, take this health screener survey every day before you come in. And so the employee would come in. This is mobile. You can view this on your phone or on a computer. It works on any device. And so they would say, okay, well, I haven't tested positive for COVID. I'm not waiting for a test result. So I'm going to say none of the above. Have you experienced one of the following? Chills, fever, sore throat? Let's say no. In the past 10 days, have you been in close contact with somebody who's had COVID-19, who's had the symptoms? No. can you certify that the above is accurate? I certify. Okay, let's do Ryan Parker. We'll do my email. The employee puts in their information and they submit it, and voila. So if you go back into our system, there we go. A new one just popped up, Ryan Parker. And then you can see how Ryan answered here. Ryan, none of the above. Here's his email, no symptoms, no proximity with anybody else, and he certified that it's true. And so he has a green light saying he can come into the office. And then if you look at the history, this is actually really cool. You can see when he made the request, how we treated it within our system, and how we responded. So you can set up automatic workflows that if they answer these questions in a certain way, automatically send them an email saying, thanks for submitting your information. You may proceed to the workplace. Now, if I had said I have COVID, then it would give you a different message, and it would automatically send a message saying, do not come into the workplace, do not come in contact with anybody for the next 14 days. And so this creates a nice audit trail for a company to be able to screen their employees from coming in and to give them the right information they need to kind of moving forward. So another reason why companies need to collect information is to get the vaccine status of their employees. Again, under some laws, that is required. And in other places, it's not explicitly required, but there's no way to comply with the law without doing it. So again, we help you create a link that has a unique vaccination survey. So employee vaccination survey, I understand. You go through, what is your vaccination status? I've been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. I've been partially vaccinated. I've been partially vaccinated and don't plan to get the final dose, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say I've been fully vaccinated. The company has required vaccinations. Okay. So some kind of information here. Thank you for submitting your response. And then again, you can come in and see the ticket and kind of see what's been done. So this was basically an anonymous vaccination survey. But basically you can program those vaccination forms however you want. And so you can go down and you can make it non-anonymous. So then you can say like, okay, we want to know how everybody's vaccinated. Here you can see FloJo filled this out. She says, I understand, I am fully vaccinated. And now okay, FloJo's fully vaccinated. This is when she received her first dose, and here's the lot number. So you can collect any information you want there. Then you can take that information and you can run analytics on it. So you can see, okay, who for our survey, let's say, or for the non-anonymous, who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, who's fully vaccinated, partially vaccinated. You can check to see, okay, who's coming into the offices, or who's been vaccinated by office. So it looks like most of the people have been vaccinated in San Francisco, not a lot in Los Angeles. And so you can run analytics on that information and keep it safe. Now you need to collect this information under the law and keep it in a place that's not with the rest of the employee's employee files. And so this is a nice place to store it that's kind of apart from the rest of where you keep your employee information. Okay, so that's how we help you kind of collect that employment health information that you have to that's required now. Okay, a couple chats here. How does the vaccination database remain HIPAA compliant? Great question. Actually, Ryan, are you on the call here?
Yes, I am.
Ryan, do you want to take that question? How does HIPAA kind of interact with this vaccine and health question collection?
So that's a great question. And HIPAA is something that's come up a lot as employers have started to collect health information. In fact, I'm an attorney. For years and years, I told my clients, never collect your employees' health information. And now there are a whole bunch of state laws that actually require companies to do the exact thing that I told them not to do for so long. But actually HIPAA does not apply to most businesses. It only applies to businesses that are in they're covered businesses, and that's typically businesses that are providing healthcare or supporting businesses that provide healthcare. And so for the vast majority of businesses, although you may have heard of HIPAA, they are not, HIPAA doesn't apply. But I'll tell you what does apply to all businesses when it comes to employee health information, and that's the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, which requires employers, if they collect health information from their employees, to do two things. One, they cannot keep that information in the employee's personnel file, it needs to be stored separately. And two, the information needs to be kept confidential, which means only those individuals who need to have access to that information. And I think those two things kind of are linked together, right? You can't have it in the personnel file so their supervisor is seeing their medical information when that's not necessary. And so those are really important steps. And the way that we help companies with that is we actually store the employee health screening information. So it doesn't find its way into personnel files because it's stored in our system. And two, we have access controls. And so the administrator who's set up to run the account can control who has access to that employee health information, and that should be limited. The nice thing when it comes to vaccination information, and you showed that vaccination survey, is that a lot of that information can be anonymized so that it can be shared with leadership in the company without having to disclose the individual vaccination status of employees or other types of health information.
Thank you, Ryan. And actually, Ryan is one of the employment attorneys who built this tool, who built these tools, who built the assessment tools, the policy tools, and helped guide the building of that survey system to make sure that it checked all the boxes as far as the ADA, the HIPAA, anything, any other adjacent regulations there. As we wait for any more questions about either the law or the tool, if you want to learn more, if you're interested in purchasing Employment 2.0 or want to learn more about it or talk to a salesperson, you can visit www.sixfifty.com/employment2. So I just put it into the chat, sixfifty.com/employment2, the number 2. And again, you can schedule a more fulsome demo. You can learn more there, and we would love to help. Any other questions about the law or the tool and how the tool kind of helps companies move forward? As we're waiting for that, let me mention one other thing. We are going to be adding to Employment 2.0 as this situation evolves. Some of the tools we're thinking of adding are a 50-state offer letter and proprietary invention assignment agreement. Again, companies are hiring people all over the place now. And so they need offer letters and invention assignment, and they're called PIAs, proprietary invention assignment agreements. They need PIAs that take into account the law in more places. And so, which again becomes a lot more complicated. Just like we talked about, the workforce is more remote and mobile. And so we're working on tools, more and more employment tools to help companies with those issues. And they'll all be included into Employment 2.0 as it moves along. So we kind of have a group of products, and then the product group will grow over time. And then again, we will update all of those products moving forward. So,
okay. I'll add just one more thing. You mentioned earlier sort of the layers of regulation that we see in return to work. And I think one example of that is what we've seen in California with Cal OSHA, where we had federal standards, and then California's OSHA came out with emergency temporary standards that required businesses in California to create a COVID prevention plan, a PPP, and put a whole bunch of things in place. And those emergency temporary standards have been amended several times. There have been attempts to amend them that have been pulled back. And actually today we're expecting to hear from the standards boards in California to see if the next round of proposed amendments are approved. But I think that's an example of how we have, as a business, responded to changes in the law, where originally we had just a return to work tool set. We created a whole new module to help businesses comply with the emergency temporary standards. And now we're watching those standards very closely as they're amended, and we'll update those and update our CPP document creation engine so that businesses can easily go in and create a new CPP that's compliant with the new standards as soon as they come out.
Thanks, Ryan. We have another question here. Does the tool create a handbook, or do you incorporate new policies into your current handbook? Really great question. You can do it either way. So you can run through the questions for the handbook. They're about 70 questions, 70 to 100 questions you need to answer there. And so you can create a handbook all at once, or we have what's called the privacy library. So actually, let me kind of show this here. Okay, there we go. 1 second. So here you can create your handbook all at once through the employee handbook tool. That could be 200 pages, depending on how many states you have and what policies you want included in that handbook. Or if you have an existing handbook and you just want to supplement it with different policies, we have a policy library. And so this policy library contains over 60 policies for you to choose from. So here's actually kind of a look at some of the documents here. There's COVID documents, return to work, CalOSHA, handbook, and then here's the policy library here. And you can see the rows and rows of policy: business expense policy, company property policy, direct deposit policy, dress code policy. Over 50 or over, gosh, I think it's 55 or 60, over 55, let's say, policies about every issue you could think of, catered to all 50 states and updated monthly. And so for there, you can just pull one off the shelf and add it into your handbook and kind of use that as a resource moving forward to get whatever policy you need there. Okay, yes, can you customize the policies from the policy library? Yes, you can customize it in 2 ways. So we're going to ask you questions about the kind of big customizations you need in the policy. Do you want to do X or do you want to do Y? And if you say X, we're going to follow up and ask you questions. Based on your answers, we're going to be adjusting, our tool is going to be adjusting the document in the background. So that's one way. You adjust it through answering the questions in our tool. The second way is we deliver it to you in Word, in Microsoft Word. So then you can take it, and if you want to phrase things a little differently, if you want to add your own tone or, add some culture things into your policy, you can do that too. So we basically give you the Word doc and it's all yours, and you can customize it from there. So again, you can customize it in our tool, some of the big choices, or you can customize it outside of the tool as well. Okay, perfect. Is the pricing you mentioned for the suite of tools, handbook plus return to work, et cetera? Yes. So for the suite of tools, that's the pricing for the suite. For the individual tools, you can buy them individually, and just like any bundle, they're more expensive than it would be if you got them in the bundle. So, but if you come and you think, I just want employee handbook, that's like what I need, you can do that through us as well, and we can sell you just the employee handbook portion of employment employment 2.0. So to kind of okay, yeah. Could you repeat the pricing? Yes. So for small companies, 1 to 50 employees, the price will range from $2,500 to $5,000 a year. And again, that's all the updates you need on every single employment issue we cover on a monthly basis. It's $2,500 to $5,000 per year, and access to create as many employment documents as you want and to use our ticketing system. For companies 100 to 500, the price, or 50 to 500, the price jumps from it goes from $5,000 to $10,000 per year. for employment 2.0. And then for companies over 500 employees, the price it ends up being over $10,000 per year for the service. And then again, you can buy the individual parts separate, and those have their own pricing there. Okay, do you have policies that address part-time and seasonal employees? That is a very good question. Ryan, do we have any policies addressing part-time or seasonal employees? I think that sounds like an independent contractor situation there. But Ryan, give us your thoughts there.
So I think that's a great question. And the answer is we currently don't have a policy about seasonal employees. This is an interesting time for seasonal employees. And I actually have been reading some legal publications about that recently. And I think that's something that we'll look into. We have over 50 policies. We recognize that there are needs for additional policies that pop up all the time, and we're always looking to fill those. And in fact, we add new policies on a weekly basis. And so we recently added, for example, a pets in the workplace policy when several customers came back to us and said, hey, our employees have been working with their pets at home and they want to bring them into the office. And I think seasonal employees is a really interesting one that we'll look to add in the future. We don't currently have that, but I do think that's one that a lot of businesses are thinking about as we enter the summer, and they can hire some younger workers, some college students, or even younger or seasonal employees of other kinds. So thank you for that suggestion. We don't currently have that policy, but we're going to look into creating it.
This is actually one of the coolest parts of this service, is that we are going to continue to build policies into this tool. And so somebody comes to us and says, hey, I need a seasonal worker policy. Great. We're going to work with Wilson Sonsini. We'll kind of pull that policy from their records or build it ourselves, and then have them look over it and then automate it and offer it in this tool. And so this is a growing, living service that we're going to update with different legal requirements, update with different policies as they come in. Actually, we released it, and a bunch of companies asked us about a pet policy. And so after that question, a couple weeks later, we had a pet policy. We rolled it out to the group, and now it's just part of the policy library there. So really great question. We don't have that policy now, but it's something that we'll look into and probably add there. I think we have maybe another chat. Let's see. No other chats. Any other questions? We have 5 minutes to go in the webinar. Last chance to answer any questions. Again, if you want to learn more, if you're interested in buying the tool and learning more about it, you can go to 650.com employment 2. 650.com/employment 2.
And Kimball, I'll just put in another plug. If there are policies you'd like us to add, we're always interested. As Kimball mentioned, 2 months ago, we added a pet policy and a video conferencing policy. Last month, we added an affinity group policy for groups that want to, or companies that want to launch an affinity group. And we're going to be thinking about pets in the workplace. We actually are working currently on a hoteling policy, which is another policy that a lot of companies have asked about as they think about moving to a hybrid workplace. So if you have other policies you'd be interested, let us know, and we'd love to develop them with the expertise of Wilson Sonsini.
Okay, here's a great question. What is the biggest next issue you see with employment issues in the pandemic, post-vaccine world? Okay, I think really the biggest issue right now is a mobile workforce. So people moving from, let's say, California, they have a Bay Area office, and then moving to Ohio. And then all of a sudden, a company, instead of having employees in one location or 2 main locations, they have employees in 15 locations. We actually talked with a company who used to have offices in 2 places and who now have employees in 20 states. I mean, the implications of that are enormous. And so, companies really trying to wrap their minds around what policies do we need? What sort of, let's say, offer letters do we need to have? What employment agreements do we need to have with those people? What are all the implications of it? I think that is the trickiest situation that employers are going to have to deal with moving forward, because now that's the way that employees want to work. And so, some businesses are trying to kind of force people back into a location, and a lot of those companies are hemorrhaging employees because employees are now demanding that they have that kind of freedom. And so, really dealing with the complications of a mobile workforce, I think, is going to be the real big task for companies moving forward for the next several years. I think one other one is, how is a company going to deal with booster shots for COVID? Because the COVID shot does not last forever. It's going to last 8 to 12 months. And so it looks like maybe every year we're going to have to get a COVID booster, like a flu shot, but for COVID. And so how does a company deal with that? Do they need to collect vaccination information every time that there's a new booster? Do they, and again, what are the rules around that? That's something we're going to monitor and kind of build into our system. I think that this data collection, health information collection from employers probably is going to last a very long time. And so it could last for years. And so anyway, we're kind of are tuned into those two things. Thank you for the question there.
I would add, Kimball, that
question?
I think we
Yeah.
have some companies that are even continuing to use health screeners even after requirements to use them are dropped by the states, because they're seeing benefits to keeping sick employees home. And I think we've all seen those situations where, or been that employee that was sick but felt they still needed to come into the office. And obviously that hasn't happened during the pandemic. And I think businesses have seen some real benefits to having employees self-assess before they come into the office. And we've talked to several companies that said, it only takes 30 seconds to do the health screener before you leave the house. We're going to have our employees continue to do that. And so I do think that in addition to vaccines, that companies have maybe entered a new phase where they'll be collecting more health information about their employees, and they need to think about how they're going to store it and keep it confidential.
So one other question that just came in: when will Employment 2.0 launch? So actually, it's already launched. We launched it about a week or a week and a half ago. We actually got some great stories, like in Bloomberg and some legal publications, and Yahoo picked it up, Morningstar, some kind of business publications too, because this is kind of a novel approach to providing legal information out to companies. So it's live now, and again, you can learn more information about it at SixFifty.com, www.sixfifty.com/employment2, the number 2. So SixFifty.com/employment2. There you can read about all the different tools in there, and you can sign up for a demo to talk with a salesperson to kind of move it along. If that's what you want to do, you can contact us. You can do everything from SixFifty.com/employment2. Okay, any last questions? We're at the hour. Last chance to ask Ryan Parker a question about what is going on in the employment world today, or to ask a question about our tools there. We're looking at the chat, looking at the Q&A. Nothing's coming in. Ryan, I think we're clear. Thank you so much for joining. Again, if you have any other questions about this, you can visit SixFifty.com/employment2, or you can email me at Kimball@SixFifty.com, and I can help kind of direct any questions you have into the right place. Thank you for joining. Please reach out if you need help. We'd love to help, and we can work with it to help it to fit your company's needs. Thank you very much.